My name is John Gillam and I'm the panel moderator for today. We're focusing on business assurance and its criticality in ecosystems. Before we get into the discussion, let me introduce the panelists. So we have today Andreas Manolis, Head of Strategy and Innovation at BT, Artemi Utimenko, Product Development Manager at Nexign, and Dr. Gadi Solorowski, Chief of Analysts at Amdocs. So, the challenge here we're talking about is business assurance, and it all hinges around the development of ecosystems and obviously the inevitable marketplaces. Andreas, if I can come to you first, how mature do you see this market for CSPs? Do you see rich ecosystems being built and the associated marketplaces, and are they finding new revenue streams now?
I think, John, we're still at the start of the process. When we're talking about the ecosystems that are outside the realm of the kind of normal telco sphere. So we've had ecosystems for quite a while, put it that way. If you look at content and content management, in a multinational organization, you'd have an ecosystem that is set up for content management, across a global sphere, and then you'd have your local NatCos or national organizations who interconnect to that digital ecosystem. But that's all within the control of the telco space. And what we're talking about now is kind of a new area. The new challenge is an ecosystem around the likes of Industry 4.0, and the introduction of, huge, vast amounts of IoT devices, and also the number of third parties that will be involved in that ecosystem, much wider. And just because of that scale, because of the increased complexity, it's going to be a new world, new challenge, and new opportunity.
Thanks, really, really insightful. I mean, it's clear that it's absolutely needed. We're talking very much around business assurance. Maybe you can also elaborate a little bit on just why is it really critical to have business assurance today in an ecosystem versus, as you've already said before, some of these things really in concept aren't new, but things have fundamentally changed. So maybe you can sort of help the audience understand a little bit why that's a challenge.
Yes, okay. Well, if we consider, and it's quite a trendy discussion about norm and new norms, right? So our current norm of where we are is I'd say a people and company centric delivery model where everything resides around the customer itself and what we deliver. So like myself, I'll have 1, 2, 3, 4 devices, but I'm the central unit of that. So everything around assurance is around that sphere of that central persona. And in the current world, we have what we do for business assurance. We have a conventional world of connected, complex processes. And what do I mean by that? If you try to draw a process map out, you've got many segregated systems and processes. You've got complex interlinks and bespoke links between those systems. We've got bespoke governance, and we have to put assurance around that. And there's a variety of data sets, lots and lots of data sets without a single master at times. And then what we need to do as an assurance function, when it's about current world, we then drive bespoke connections and bespoke access requirements each time a new requirement comes along. In that process, we're under a bit of control of when we release those products, when we release the solutions to our customers. So there's time to wait for assurance to actually build the controls in order to make sure there is a level of trust in that environment. Yeah, it is high cost still because we're bespoke, and it's a lengthy time to assurance to market. So we have a balance to play. Now let's go to the new world, like you said. So let's talk about the digital ecosystem, the marketplace that has a centralized data approach. Here, it's much different because we've moved into Industry 4.0, for an example. IoT and devices are out there. There's a different model with third parties. There's a big change in the model of ownership as well. Who owns the asset? Is it a leased asset? who maintains the asset. It's all a brand new world. So you've got much more players involved in that. Who's going to drive the governance around this big ecosystem and assurance? How does the telco assurance function assure the centralized digital ecosystem, right? And how do we work on the data sets that exist there? So in the new world, we won't have the luxury, shall I call it now, of bespoke and lengthy assurance time to market. There's a massive drive, and this is why actually we're driving the mega catalyst within the TM Forum with many of our of the companies involved in it, where we're actually looking to proactively make a change in the industry to move from the old world that I described, which is quite complex, to a connected central governance of activities, delivering and working with TM Forum to provide standardized API access and standards so we can get to centralized data sets. And when I mean centralized data sets, also the concept and driving a centralized master DLT, distributed ledger technology as a data set. So you have a master, and then be efficient and sustainable in this 4.0 environment, and also enable trust. Because what we do today in a telco, in a very complex, segregated environment, we need to do for the new ecosystem.
Thanks, Andreas. So kind of maybe we can come to Gadi next. There's a lot of problems there that Andreas is highlighting, particularly in the literally in the just the simple management of a transaction across multiple organizations. So within Amdocs, and also obviously within your catalyst, how are you seeing these problems being resolved, and how do you see the service providers and what are responding to these, and what are their new demands?
So I think it's a very interesting question, and we should distinguish between what is happening now and what will happen in the future. And as Andreas said, this is part of what we are developing in the catalyst. So now most of the CSPs are trying to apply the old methodology to the new ecosystems. So you will have onboarding of partner, you will try to put there a control to verify that everything with this partner is okay, and that's great. But the problem is that the ecosystem is much more complex, as Andreas said. You will have many partners, a lot of onboarding and disboarding of partners, relations that just are not just bilateral. So it became very complex. So some CSPs are saying, okay, let's focus on the main partners. Let's forget about all the others and put their controls, traditional controls. But of course, part of the idea of the marketplace, the ecosystem, is to have the long tail of partners, many partners coming, working together, etc. And this approach cannot work there. Why? Because first, it will take you too much time to onboard somebody there, to put the controls. It would cost you too much, and it will not be dynamic enough. People will have to wait. And you want to do it like Amazon. A new vendor wants to come to Amazon, do a quick onboarding and start selling their products. So you have to change. And this change needs to start from the ecosystem itself, from the marketplace. And the idea, as Andreas started to mention, is first to use a common data repository in form of a distributed ledger. So there you will provide transparency for everybody. You will be able to put the data there using the same APIs and the same data semantics and format. That way you can create automatic controls for each partner that's in onboarding. No extra work, the control will be there. But you still have the second layer, the layer that will compare the ecosystem with the internal system of the operators, because the operators will not change from today to tomorrow all their internal systems. So you need to ensure that this distributed ledger also represents the internal billing, CRM system, etc. This is part of what we started to define in this catalyst. We started to design the controls, and the most important part, the approach, how we can solve this problem. And I think as part of this catalyst, we really did a great advance showing the next generation of business assurance for this kind of complex ecosystems.
Thanks, Gadi. Maybe Artemi, do you see the same problems, or do you see other things and other big barriers that are preventing change right now for CSPs?
Right. I think that, as Andres mentioned, we have this dynamics moving from the old world with a long procurement contract and the necessary due diligence to a more dynamic process when time to market can drop from months to weeks or even days. And the reason we are building the data layer for this catalyst is to make sure that this ecosystem meets the demand for the dynamics at the very foundation. So all the transactions are immediate, immutable, and can provide reliable data to upper levels we're building at the Mega Catalyst. And we had experience with Orange and Rostelecom, who are champions for this catalyst. They are CSPs of very different profile. So Orange is a multinational organization, and Rostelecom is based mostly in Russia, and MVNO is still a growth opportunity for them. So we are ensuring that we have the use cases which are suitable for operators of different profile and caliber, and they are able to pull in all the necessary resources and join the trade mechanisms that are essential for the upcoming 5G monetization scenarios.
Artemi, very interesting point you make there, particularly around the profiles of different service providers. So feels like today's world, everybody wants to be global. Everybody's trying to attract that global market, but you're highlighting very specifically some of your customers have got very distinct profiles. They're going after very specific markets. Is there truly now a significant difference in a peer-to-peer ecosystem, and therefore the business assurance that needs to occur between a national player versus a multinational?
Yeah, I believe most operators have the ambition to be global players, and they have the resources that they can offer. Even this can be data center resources or some communication channels or customer-facing inbound travel offerings, for example. But another strategy operators can follow is just be a niche player, and the marketplace is also suitable for this kind of offerings. So if someone is proficient in providing RAN resources or radio frequencies, there is also a place for them to be a significant member in this ecosystem.
Which clearly played into a very rich, very diverse, players that have got very, very niche services versus players that have got lots of broad capabilities. So, when we hear about the benefits of the true, platform business model, that obviously resonates very, very heavily. Maybe if I quickly come back to Gadi, you talked already about distributed ledger being a key technology in solving business assurance problems across ecosystems. What are your views on AI, so the machine learning and deep learning algorithms that need to be going on? Are they essential, or are they just a nice to have?
No, I think that today they are a must. So let's look at different angles of business assurance. First, if you speak about fraud management, then large part of the fraud management is to try to detect what the fraudsters are doing. So to detect unknown things. And here you have a key role for AI, Why it's a key role? Because until now, you just did your controls based on your knowledge. And you were trying all the time, trying to learn more and more. But of course, the fraudsters try to anticipate you. By applying AI, you can get ahead of that. You can use AI and machine learning to learn the behavior of the fraudster, to learn changes in the behavior of the fraudster. So it's a great tool. And the application of AI machine learning started in the area of business assurance, especially in fraud. But now we are seeing that it's also moving a lot more to revenue assurance. Because in revenue assurance, you again still to have a lot of controls, and you need to adapt those controls to the changes in your systems, to the changes in your business plans, etc. By applying machine learning and AI, you can do all this automatically. So, for example, a field in which we are seeing machine learning penetrating is bill QA, the verification that the bills are correct, which was and still is in most parts a highly manual activity. Now you see that you're combining rules and machine learning to get better results. But just to be clear, I don't believe that machine learning will replace rules, will replace knowledge. Whenever you have knowledge, you know for what you are looking, you can put a rule, and that's great. Machine learning can give you the next layer, the layer that you don't have yet in many places, the layer of discovering new things.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that, John, as well. I think if you look at the practitioner side of things as well, and talking about total cost of ownership and operations, the more complex the setup that we have in the networks, one great example, 5G, and then 5G slicing that is coming our way into different vertical industries. Now, take a current revenue assurance, business assurance function, and then ask the management team to cover 5, 6, 7, let's just go 10 different slices, right? That means you've got 10 times the amount of rules that you need to have in that to actually effectively cover and find issues of anomalies. Now, in this world and where we are, do we have times 10 cost base to bring additional staff on board to deliver that service? The answer is easy. It's no. You have to be able to do that with your existing staff, but also you have to be more efficient. So the AI ML components, as Gardi described, fundamentally anomaly detection and being able to apply it to that, whereby that means you have almost, times 100 efficiency effectiveness. So you don't have to have an individual updating rules. They are self-updated, self-healing, self-adaptive. You can call self. They are automatically adapting to the network is ultimately important. And AI, ML, machine learning, matched with some data science around, the standard deviation models that used to exist. We need that. And also the predictive analytics component of that. So as an assurance function, you need to make sure that you identify anomalies now, but anomalies for the future. So AI and ML will be essential to be able to make sure that you have the right assessment, the right change in thresholds. And I'll add one more thing. Let's flip AI to the opposite window, and you get in a mirror image, and you get IA. And IA in the industry is intelligent automation. So we also need intelligent automation. So when we apply AI, we don't apply it to everything. What I mean by that is there are certain areas that actually you can apply machine learning. You just don't have enough data sets available to create the right prediction. When you start looking at standard deviations and the mean and the norm and everything else, you can't apply as yet, or the pattern is too sporadic. That's not something you apply to do modeling in AI. You need to be able to, have something that has a pattern that you can actually use. So intelligent automation is really important because you need to apply it to the right space. So when you apply AI, you can actually have metrics that come out that guide individuals. Should I apply it? Should I not apply it? And there's one more reason, John, that the current world won't allow us to move that way in some cases, really important though, audit. Yeah, so when you move to AI and then you have a black box approach to changing all your thresholds, and you have an audit function, as we all do, and they're asking, so why did you set that threshold? You need to be able to actually differentiate where you've got some kind of control where the human is looking at it, and when the black box is making the change in the threshold, you also need to have reasons for that change. Otherwise, you could fail current audit standards.
And just to give another perspective on that, we are not doing lots of AI-related work directly in our data layer Catalyst, but we are making a great effort to build it in a standard-based way, so it's easily integrated with BSS and OSS systems operators are running, and lots of orchestration can happen easily this way. And the great side effect of it is that we are delivering a well-structured data set that can be a reliable source of formalized data points to run against the AI and IA algorithms that Andreas mentioned.
And one more point that I want to add, it was a short question, long answer by all of us, is that, you know, AI has two traditional points, the prediction part, the detection part, but the third element, which is really important, is the generation of insights. And one of the things that you can receive from AI is insights that can help your analysts to go to the right direction to detect new things. So I think that by combining these three elements, you get a lot of value, as we all said, from AI and machine learning.
Yeah, and now Gardy's triggered what, you know, the thought that we'll go for the fourth one, shall we, Gardy, on top. We've discussed it as well, and it is part of some of the catalyst work that we're looking at in the future. Is you talk about, you know, AI and mixing it with automation. And automation, you have naturally RPA at the far end, but we've got the capability of adding cognitive, and cognitive AI and ML would allow for the machine element to understand next best action or current action to take. So when anomalies are identified, the cognitive element can actually kick off. And then if we're smart enough, we will connect. If we're smart enough and we're able to do it, that means with the right confidence level, as I mentioned, you have to apply it in the right way. You can actually run end-to-end automation on anomalies. So you've detected it, you've classified it in the right way, you've connected to an RPA element, and actually you've driven an end-to-end corrective activity. And the most important bit right at the end, as Gardy said, not only have you driven that intelligently using AI, ML, and everything that goes with it, you'll have a dashboard with all the insights and analytics of what just happened before. So important, as what Gardy mentioned.
It's really interesting.
John, one more point. Just for all the people listening to this panel and interested in this topic of AI and machine learning, one of the things that we generated as part of our catalyst is a guidebook with over 40 use cases of AI and machine learning for business assurance. So go take that material and you will see much more about what this topic.
Thanks, Gadi. And yeah, I mean, some absolutely great work comes out of the Catalyst teams, that all work on these products and contribute back to obviously the rich set of standards and guidebooks and that get produced through the great work that gets done. I kind of want to come back to one point, and it's in and around the AI element, and you mentioned one word a minute ago, Andreas, which was audit. So I'm kind of having my mind now. We've got a complex arrangement of partners. Yeah, we've got a lot of products and services being sold. Some may be physical, some may be maybe just pure people hours and so on and so forth. We've got a rich marketplace of capability that's built from all of these partners. Complexity of handling those transactions, I get. Doing the business assurance end-to-end is key. Obviously, I guess one of the major factors of this is, well, of course you could do it if there was only a handful of them, but if we're talking about hundreds or thousands of providers and tens of thousands of products and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of customers, yeah, that gets a little bit harder to work out, and clearly automation and intelligence comes in. But we're starting to get, and we must be getting close, but correct me if I'm wrong here, to these transactions can be quite personal. So how do things like GDPR and then the use of AI come into play? And in particular, I'm thinking around the whole audit function. How do we guarantee that actually a machine learning algorithm is doing what it should do and not creating challenges that are unwanted?
Great question. I think if I had all the answers now, it's that common answer, I'd be a multimillionaire. So, we of course, and there's ethics involved as well as what you do with AI. But I think the one component and where we can get smarter on kind of let's call it the privacy aspect or the information sharing aspect you mentioned. If we put like GDPR as a standard to the side, but the whole thing about there's a required wall, right, between the different parties. And if you have a centralized digital ecosystem, like quite rightly you said, John, all the information's there. What can you share and what should you share? I think that's the beauty of what you can do with DLT, because on that you can the concept of tenants, right? Tenants in terms of the different aspects of services that you also provide, and there's lots of personas under there. But breaking it down, if like a CSP, and what we would do today, any CSP would do today, we'd assure our realm, and we know what we need to do within that. We have the control and the boundaries. As soon as then when we connect to a digital ecosystem that has multiple parties, like you said, what we can do and make good arrangements with the DLT is that we are a trusted node, right? And as part of that trusted node connection to a central node, we would only see the transactions that are relevant to ourselves and our customers. That means it's great. And this is where DLT can help us. I'm not saying it's going to resolve everything, but it's key to the question that you ask of how do you make sure that you, in such centralized platforms, you share the right information with the right party. So I think I can answer that component of your question.
So, and maybe to
Gadi, go ahead, please.
Gadi, sorry.
So to add to that, there are two very important aspects in machine learning models: to ensure that the model is not biased, and to be able to create a model that can generate explanations, explain why it did achieve some decisions. In some cases, you have kind of trade-off between the quality of the model and being able to generate explanations and not being biased. But in many projects, we decide, okay, we will not go for the perfect model. We will settle for a model that it's a little less than perfect, but that it's not biased and that we can generate explanations. So if we say that this is perhaps a fraudster, we can get the explanation why the model decides that this person is perhaps a fraudster. So it's a trade-off, and case by case, you need to decide what is the right balance.
And the thing I have to add is when we are building a marketplace that operates on a global scale, there are always challenges meeting local regulations like GDPR you mentioned, or some strict regulations on personal data we have in Russia. And on the data layer, we are leveraging the security capabilities of the DLT, managing the visibility of some records. So we have transparency where it's required for business assurance, but some sensitive data can be visible only to the participants of a certain transaction. And we are also reusing some industry accepted mechanisms for identity management for eSIM-based products. For example, we can use eSIM as identity module to meet some of the regulatory requirements. And this way, CSPs can be great identity providers for the end customers, which we can see as the next step in development of our ecosystem.
Thanks, guys. Maybe you can come back to Andreas on this one. The elephant in the room, I feel at the moment now, is there are some very big and very successful marketplaces out there right now by all of the common names that we know. What's the difference? What's the challenge in the model that the CSP has and the operator? It's clearly different. Otherwise, it would have been done. Maybe you could help sort of help me understand a little bit more about what are the specific problems in creating CSP-based marketplaces and the subsequent ecosystem versus one of the more traditional ones that we might know.
Yeah. So. I mean, if you're talking, let's call one out, which is an amazing one, like Amazon Central, digital marketplace, one of the most successful central marketplaces in the world. But that is on known, products mainly, rather than services, and it's taken a traditional model and implemented a centralized model to run all the distribution and customer-centric activities and enable partners to be able to then distribute their product sets outside. Now, in this world that we're going to, and this is it, the world that we're moving to, that's the key, I think, John. IoT and 5G is new, right? We keep talking about, and what's going to be, before it was the killer app, what's going to be the killer services, the amazing kind of new services that we expect. These business models are being developed as we speak. There are new areas such as gaming and the cloud areas that are being progressed, and edge, you name it. There's a huge amount of new areas, but they are new. So unlike the digital marketplace, where you have let's call it a common model of contractual arrangement, where you know what your arrangement is for your SLAs, your delivery components. You can sell hundreds of different products, but at the end of the day, you got to get your product from X to Y at the right price, at the right time, to the right place. Very different in an IoT 5G world, where we're still defining all of that. And also virtualization, right? So you mentioned before, is it a real product, physical product, or is it virtual? Is it software? It's a whole new ball game out there of defining what that new world is. And I think this is why we're at still at the early stages of the journey, to get there.
Thanks. So that begs another question: timing. So how big is this window of opportunity? What does the vendor space need to do? What do the Amdoxes and the Nexigns need to do in order to help accelerate it? Because I'm hearing there's an awful lot of complex problems being solved here. There's answers to big key questions that are coming very, very strongly and sound very mature. How long have we got for CSPs? How long does that window open, and then what happens if it's missed?
Well, I think that's a very difficult question, and we will be able to give a good answer in a few years. But looking from the point now, I think that now is the window of opportunity. There is a big change. We are starting to deploy 5G, slice link, edge computing. So there is a technological change. And this is the opportunity, together with the technological change, to do a business change. So I would say you should do it now.
Do you think critical?
I would agree, and of course, Rome wasn't built in a day, and we have a multi-year plan on how to build an ideal ecosystem, but we also concentrate on the use cases that can reach the proof of concept stage quite early, maybe next year. And once they are visible, they can lay the foundation we can build upon, rather than doing endless blueprints.
Maybe Andreas, just to kind of finish that point. So sounds like good long-term roadmaps, good problems being solved right now. One thing I know as a consumer, and kind of certainly as an observer of the world we live in today, the consumer market's impatient. I'm pretty sure the business market is growing ever more impatient for new things to create their own parts of their own differentiation. How long's that customer base going to wait for this change to happen? And and what do you think that kind of rollout path looks like? We've talked a lot about 5G and 5G slicing. 5G's here, slicing's coming. Is it critical? Is that one of the key enabling technologies, or can we get going, as Gadi says, right now?
Yeah, I think it's thinking about how to answer that one. It is continue with the path that we're on today, but it's like you said, greater opportunities going forward, John, in being more specific to certain industries. I mean, if you look at even the TM Forum reports that are coming out, you can see, key verticals, new industry verticals that we can make a much bigger play on, and we need to assure them, which is key. The part around the medical industry, and the healthcare industry is key, and we've seen, COVID accelerate the required, support that the telcos are providing with infrastructure, and how to differentiate that experience that they receive and give them, specific deliverables in the same way. And, like you said, we've been hearing about it for years. When will it actually happen? When will it convert? The autonomous car, in that industry, that's been talked about for a while, 3 years, 4 years. So, what we need to do is be ready for it. What do I mean by that? Be ready for it. Now I'm going to move back into the assurance bit, and I think it's what Artemi kind of said and what we've been discussing with Gardi. We don't know the specific business models that are coming our way. We know there is change happening, and we can identify the areas that we need to be ready for in terms of that future. What do I mean be ready for? Complex contracts and contract management and assurance. Platforms with AI and machine learning that can actually identify those and obtain the classes of the contract so we can understand how we assure it, the right SLAs, etc. Let's go beyond that, John. We can use AI and machine learning to actually create the best template for a given contract with flexibility, but within a percentage variance. Wouldn't that be great? Rather than having, our staff fully define exactly how, they deliver it, and maybe go off-road in certain cases. You have to be specific and define. You can use AI and machine learning. We're already doing that. We've got solutions in place that can do that and can form part of bid management. So assurance can actually move into supporting the operations for those, complex bespoke contracts. Asset management, how we're going to assure the assets, who owns the assets, how do we maintain the assets, and again, Artemi mentioned it and Gardi mentioned it, how do we actually understand and build a secure data layer where we can have a single point of view into those assets, that we can collaborate with our third parties as well to make sure that we have the right understanding of where they are, and even how we decommission, those assets in an efficient and green manner too, with everything going on in the world today. So a sustainable future is important. And there's so many other things that we could be looking at, but as I said, it's the idea that there are more specific and bespoke activities happening. We can use AI machine learning to keep up with those, but also we can actually define measures how we can get involved in standardizing and simplifying the future setup.
Thanks, Andreas. You make me smile at the idea of an AI-enabled custom contract. Having worked at the same organization, that would have been a dream to a product manager. Lots of time saved if we got algorithms to do that. That would be very, very cool. Quite like the idea of it. So maybe just to come to all of you individually as we're wrapping up this session. What's next for your catalyst? Is it complete, or are you looking to, you got to refine the existing problems, or have you got a new problem to challenge? Maybe I'll come to Gadi first.
So if we're speaking about the mega catalyst, I think that we finished the first stage. So we understood the problem. We look at the methodology that it's needed to solve this problem. We did the first steps to implement that methodology. We still need to fully implement it. And I think that this gives room for a second stage of this catalyst, in which we will take all these wonderful ideas and methodology and make it happen in reality.
Thanks, Gadi. Artemi, how about you?
Well, we are moving from some proofs of concept to full-scale marketplace development, maybe with a limited subset of use cases, but functioning on a global level. It's essential for it not to be separate from the operator's business, but be integrated with the BSS systems, providing export and import for resources and orchestration opportunities. So our next steps would be to leverage the open APIs TM Forum provides and create a set of standards for this DLT-based marketplace integration that Nexign or Amdex or anyone else could use to plug in to their business support systems.
Thanks, Artemi. And Andreas, final words from you.
Yeah, and I think what can I add to Gardi and Artemi, which is great. The fact that we have, I have to say, 27 different companies working on the Mega Catalyst, to drive the initiative, just shows how we are collaborating, working for the better good of our industry, to deliver and get ready for the future. There are the three components again that we're driving, which is our data layer, and have that as an established DLT around the assets and asset management. We are working at the settlement layer. So as you mentioned, John, but multi-complex, multi-party settlement processes. No longer are we talking about two-dimensional, three-dimensional. We're going to four-dimensional models that are out there. And then the importance of assurance. So assurance going forward as well. As Artemi mentioned, Rome wasn't built in a day, and we actually wanted to get further today than we are, but realizing actually we're making a tremendous change at the moment in the way that assurance will function for the future. The fact that we have influenced and worked together to identify some central DLTs that provide us a central data set that we can trust, whether it's the assets, asset level, and we didn't even envisage this at the start, part of all of our collaboration, a centralized DLT for the financial settlement component. And now and what Gardi's doing and with all the team is we are defining these centralized, standardized APIs that we'll release them for TM Forum. How long does that take, John? As you know yourself, it takes about a year to 2 years to establish those and get them all approved across the industry. But we want to make that as the default standard. I think as Nick mentioned, as part of his opening speech on the TM Forum DTWS, it's about embedding those into the industries, and we have your support to do that with the great minds, across the industry that we have on the catalysts. And by embedding that, we can actually provide, and enable a better future for us, because the current way that we are going today with, as I mentioned, the length of time it takes for us to assure items, the length of time that we're taking to drive bespoke requirements, the cost that's involved in that, that's not sustainable. So what we're doing here is actually building the foundations for the future, and also as we do that, we get excited, we have great insights, and you even heard on this panel, we have said, whoa, there's a third point, there's a fourth point. So collaboratively working together, we come up with these ideas, and we implement them within our own organizations. We share them and make sure that the industry progresses in the right evolution to be in the right place for the future. What the exact future is, John, as you said, if you are a multimillionaire, billionaire, we'd know. We do not know that, but we are preparing ourselves, and it's better to be prepared than not.
Very, very wise words, very wise words. Well, thank you all so much. Incredibly engaging, very, very interesting. Really appreciate all your insights. Thank you all to the audience for watching. Just let me remind you, we're all here. Please stay, engage on the platform. Really importantly, check out the innovation area. You'll find all of the catalysts talked about, specifically the Mega Catalyst and the other 32 that exist around. The one thing I would say, Andreas, is actually 29 companies now joined that. So it's becoming self-sustaining in itself, the amount of interest that this whole area is creating. So it's incredibly exciting, hugely privileged myself to be involved with all of the Catalyst teams. That's great. Please keep watching. Thank you all, and speak soon.
Thank you.